I've been gently calling The Exorcist movie because I don't actually know what it's called. What is it actually called?
Shit, I don't know.
I don't either.
David Gordon Green's The Exorcist.
But it's called something.
No, I know it is. I don't know. I don't care. When we were, they still do it, and we don't watch television, so I don't know if they still do it. But how many TV spots did you see of a movie where a week later, the number one movie in America, see what everyone's talking about?
Yeah.
Or something that's more specific. The number one comedy in America, the number one horror movie in America. What does that mean? What does the number one mean?
The most lucrative.
It was the one that the most people went to see. That's not a review. That's just an arbitrary thing. People fall for that, and that's what it's going to be next week, if they still do those commercials. Even if they don't, there'll just be ads in your social media feed that will say that. That's part of why I'm happy. I'm happy not to see it and give it money. Not that I'll make any difference, but because he's signed on for a trilogy, like Halloween. There's going to be 2 more of these, and they're not going to unless they back down, which they often do. So all of these movies just need Danny McBride to be in them. 90s horror. How do you feel about that? Is that even a thing? Apparently it is a thing. Because after we started this, Criterion decided to copy us. Criterion Channel, anyway.
Whether they copied us or we're just all on the same wavelength remains to be seen.
They are. Well, that Into the Darkness documentary about the 80s, and they did 3 of them, 3 like 4-hour documentaries about 80s horror. What do you think the next one's about? So it's a thing. It's clearly a thing. It's not. We're not geniuses for recognizing it. We've just been vocal about it for longer because it's there. Because it's so palpable. You can feel it. There's the vibe shifted. The tide of terror shifted. It's an uneven decade, but it doesn't feel like anything before it or after it.
Early 1990s horror feels very much like late 1980s horror. It really kind of held on a little bit. It really completely capsized in the late 90s and feels very, very, very 90s.
Well, I think that's what we're going to talk about today. Thus and so, I've gone. It was a tough choice because I wanted to go mid 90s as to sort of capture that balance, because there is a balance, because there is an BC and AD in 90s horror, absolutely. And I've gone right in the middle, from July of 1995.
Okay.
It's middle,
Dead center.
Dead center. Well, there was a June one too, but this one I think has more talking points. This is issue number 144. With Species right on the cover.
Yeah.
You seen Species?
I have.
Okay. So like every year in this magazine, that whatever like 10 or 12 movies that come out within that 12-month period, every issue is just about those movies. They mention species probably in like 5 different issues. Because what else are they going to talk about? Like every month they got to come out with a new issue. It's like, well, nothing new has come out yet, so let's talk about this again. Not a lot of horror going on here.
No, we're calling attention to the Batman Forever there. That's pretty scary. I don't know.
Well, then that's a good point, because July 1995. So this is probably on newsstands maybe 2 months prior or 1 month prior. They don't want to be the only magazine on the newsstand that doesn't have a picture of Batman something related on the cover. And they picked a great picture too. Like, right, makeup effects related, and what does it say? Batman Forever Dark Knight preview. What else did they mention? Special report, role-playing games, You Control the Terror. Computer games, not to be completely 1995, but Congo, guerrilla warfare. This was a dry time for horror. Judge Dredd. It's funny, when this magazine started, they were so stuck in science fiction. 1, because there was more of it than horror, and 2, because this is still a sister magazine to Starlog, which was the science fiction magazine, and they were trying to move over into horror, but still every issue was about whatever new bullshit Star Wars ripoff was out at that time. This issue feels so much like that, or at least this cover. Once we get into the issue, the elegy, which is the introduction by Anthony Timpone, who was the editor at the time, took over from Bob Martin. Just the first paragraph. No other genre is quite as cyclical as horror these days. After years of drought, late 1994 and the first quarter of 1995 witnessed a new boom in fright films. Of the early 1995 terror bandwagon, only Demon Knight emerged as a modest success, well above the poor box office takes of In the Mouth of Madness, Candyman, Farewell to the Flesh, Hideaway, and The Mangler. As I write this, Village of the Damned is a week away from release, and the offbeat Tales from the Hood should open just before this issue hits stands. Just in that opening paragraph, that's a good sense of the great first half of the 90s, right? The stuff we actually do like. The stuff that, when we say 90s horror, that's the stuff I think of, not the second half, which we'll, I guess, talk about. And in the second paragraph, he brings up Wolf and Frankenstein and The Interview with the Vampire, which apparently all came out the year prior, and no one mentions Invisible Man, but my list goes Dracula, Invisible Man, Memoirs of Invisible Man, as far as the Universal monsters making their big comeback, which for me defined the first half of the 90s.
It was
such a huge deal.
It was, and it was heavy, and it was in the air.
And Dracula kicked that off.
Yeah.
Well, I've gone on about it. I loved it because I was so excited for it, but I think I was disappointed that it wasn't as scary as I thought it would. It wasn't until in my adulthood that I realized that none of these movies were as scary as I thought they were, mostly because of this magazine.
But you appreciated the craft and how beautiful it was.
It matched the advertising campaign, which was directed solely at me personally, but also at children. Not just the trailers and TV spots, but the comic books and trading cards and bookmarks and collectible coins and Halloween costumes and video games on every platform. I had a fucking video game. You weren't telling me they were trying to sell me, 9-year-old me, to go see this movie, because they absolutely were. And it worked, because I went. Having a Dracula movie got me into those monsters. They call them Universal monsters, but just, when you say Universal monsters, you talk about the 30s and the 40s, but really just old Bram Stoker, Mary Shelley, H.G. Wells.
Not the word itself, meaning the brand, but just the word and what it defines as too. Like,
yeah.
your basic, like, run-of-the-mill, like, universal
monsters, yes. Being my age at that time, which is sort of a wonky age, not somewhat Gen X, but actually millennial, kind of a 90s kid, but mostly an 80s kid. So it's this weird sort of balance. So, yeah, Freddy Krueger and Jason were in the air, but suddenly here I was, almost 10 years old, and suddenly Dracula and the Wolfman and the Invisible Man and were all suddenly in my face. It made for a weird upbringing. Cultural upbringing. Postal Zone. A lot of letters about Interview with the Vampire, which had just come out. Basically, everyone bitching about this was the same deal as when after Batman came out, and everyone was bullshit that they cast Beetlejuice as Batman, and then everyone said, "Oh, what a great job you've done." When Interview with the Vampire came out, everyone was pissed off that they got the guy from Risky Business to be in this vampire movie. And then everyone said, "Oh, what a great job."
He has range.
No one more than Anne Rice, who was livid that you got this pretty boy to be in my bullshit erotic vampire fantasy movie story. Where he just happened. Yeah, well, I was going to say he's the best part of the movie.
He completely morphed into that character. There's no way that's Tom Cruise.
No,
who everyone says, "Oh, it's just Tom Cruise. It's Tom Cruise." That was not Tom Cruise.
No, and he never is, and that's the thing.
He completely brought Lestat to life.
He did
in that movie.
He did. He was the best part of the movie.
You've been a very, very naughty little girl.
Once he's out of the... we've talked about this before. Once he leaves the movie, the movie's done. Which sucks, because there's like about an hour left of that movie after he leaves. And I don't remember any of it.
I like that it focuses a lot on Kirsten Dunst, but you have to like...
Then she leaves.
But she's stringing along the Brad Pitt character, who, God love him, and has some of my favorite roles, but... He was
stiff as a board.
He's terrible.
Stiff as a board.
Terrible. Absolutely
I'm
terrible.
glad you feel that way. I've always
bad.
thought about that. Yeah. He was hired for his looks. Tom brought his shit, because that's what he does.
And this little girl upstages this.
Well, okay, so fair enough. Yeah. Tom Cruise number 1, Kirsten number 2. And everyone said, and that's not any revelation. Everyone, she didn't get an Oscar nomination for that, did she?
No, but that whole scene when she reveals the twins, when she feeds him the dead blood or whatever it's called.
Yeah.
And her behavior and her performance in that is like some of the best acting ever. And that was like her first movie role. It
was her first movie role. All fairness to Brad, they didn't give... That character was so uninteresting. And also, to be fair to him, he did a lot with it, as uninteresting as that character is, because that character is not... There's nothing... He's two-dimensional at best.
So this really is the story of, like, the vampire and all the interesting things he meets and sees along the way. He's
a witness, yeah. He's for everything. We were just watching Siskel and Ebert talking about Dick Tracy, how Gene was bummed how Dick Tracy was not an interesting character, and Roger said, no, he is there for the other characters to bounce off of. And they're the interesting ones, and we watch them, and we don't really, and the lead really isn't the interesting part. That is Louis' role in this movie. Because it's an interview. He's a witness. Page 8, Monster Invasion. The Fangoria Fright File of up-to-the-minute news breaks and other horrible happenings. This is about stuff coming out. One of which is Children of the Corn 3. Having looking at those for the first time recently, that's the best one that I think I saw. Do you agree? Do you remember that one?
I do. It was very gory, graphic.
Most notably, Children of the Corn 3 Urban Harvest, because I noted that I love when the monster goes to the city.
Yeah.
And that helped. That was part of it. And you said gory. Screaming Mad George did the effects, who it was kind of after that movie that I realized, you talk about KNB and Tom Savini and these heroes of ours, or of this magazine. Screaming Mad George is my favorite.
Really?
I guess you call it that. I don't know if he just got the best. He got the best jobs, because I know Tom Savini was always bummed that he had to come in and find a way to cut someone's head off realistically, when really what he wanted to do was build creatures. He wanted to build monsters, which is what he got to do in that Tales from the Dark Side episode he directed. That troll monster that lives in the closet. He designed Fluffy.
Yeah.
And for Creepshow.
Yep.
And he said these are his favorite things that he got to do. He so rarely got to be an artist, building from the ground up, instead of just coming in and doing practical effects. Where how do you slit someone's throat and make it look cool
on camera.
He got hired for that a lot. Whereas Screaming Mad George said, we need you to create what do you call it? He who walks behind the rose. Yeah. We want to see what he looks like. Go ahead and invent him. He got to do shit like that. But he was good at it, though. I mean, he had an upper hand in that sense, but also in the sense that he would come up with things that were really bizarre and gross. And they came through in this movie. Because the Children of the Corn series is so fucking stupid.
Sorry to get sidetracked. Just saying.
Not getting sidetracked. But wait, there's more. Actually, we'll get to that. First, I want to talk about Freddy vs. Jason. In July of 1995, I want to talk about Freddy vs. Jason.
Okay.
Because ever since Freddy Krueger's talon-fingered mitt reached out from the sand at the end of Jason Goes to Hell and clutched at the Crystal Lake Horror's facial apparel. Boy, that's poetic. Fans of both fearsome franchises have been salivating over the idea of a team-up between Horrordom's terrible twosome. Which is selling that short, because they've been wanting that, I think, since probably Nightmare on Elm Street 2 came out. Like, hey, we gotta get these guys together. It was the blood was boiling because of that ending of Jason Goes to Hell. Talk about great endings of movies. That's never makes the list, but that's a great ending of a movie. Screenwriter Peter Briggs is currently tapping out the script for the film, with pre-production planned for this summer and a tentative opening set for next year. Briggs, a former FX cameraman whose spec script, The Hunt, Alien vs. Predator, landed him several writing assignments. So he wrote something that people read, liked, didn't make, and now it's getting him work. That's cool.
That is
on its own. He reveals that his script picks up 8 years after A Nightmare on Elm Street 5, The Dream Child, and Jason Goes to Hell. So he skips over Freddy's Dead and New Nightmare, obviously. He says, the prologue is set in 17th century Italy, which will really perplex people, but there is a logic to it. What does that sound like? That sounds like Hellraiser 4 to me, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It concerns the end of the universe and the end of time, and Jason and Freddy are two pawns in a very large game. In addition to Freddy vs. Jason, there is also a big third surprise, but you're going to have to see the movie to find out what it is. Guess what? I've gone on the internet, and I found Peter Briggs' script for Freddy vs. Jason.
You did not.
I sure did.
Did you read the whole thing?
I read the pertinent parts.
Okay.
I think what he's referring to as the big third surprise is that there is some sort of Satan-like character who is using them as pawns, named Thanos. And, reading him, I'm not good at reading scripts on paper because it just always sounds dumb to me. which isn't that weird because usually when they make it to the screen, it still is dumb. And I don't know. I'm just glad the actual Freddy vs. Jason didn't get this grand. He went big. He went big budget. It just makes me wonder. I know we're talking about 90s horror, and here we are sitting and talking about Freddy and Jason. But I wonder what a mid-90s Freddy vs. Jason would have looked like. I'm so glad it wasn't this. Having said that, this sounds like what Freddy vs. Jason in the mid-1990s would have sounded like. It would have looked like Species. It would have looked like Lawnmower Man. It would have looked like Hideaway. It would have looked like a 64-bit interpretation of some other world. And I'm glad Freddy and Jason never made it there. Even when Jason went to outer space, it didn't look like that. I like the concept that he took he does take characters from Jason Goes to Hell, and he does take Alice and Alice's son from Nightmare on Elm Street 5.
Really?
And these are all these are the main characters.
Wow.
And that's fun. I like that. But this
Dark Overlord?
yeah, this Dark Overlord wasn't cutting it. Sorry, Peter. They started doing this thing around this time called Skeletons in the Closet, where whoever was popular around this time, around mid-90s, they would say, you know, they were once in a low-budget horror movie. So obviously, like Brad Pitt and Jennifer Aniston, people like that, like anyone who was popular then. This one focuses on Leo, or they talk about Critters 3, which is a good movie. And people say, oh, he doesn't like to talk about that. And bullshit, I've heard him talk about that. He brings it up when people say, when it's like big long interviews, like podcasts, like talk about your career, and he'll always mention Critters 3, as he should. I like Critters. Critters 3 is my second favorite one after Part 2, I think.
Yeah, it's a fun one.
It is a fun one.
No playing here!
One is a bore.
And 4 is incomprehensible.
And 4 is, despite having an amazing cast, like you said, was incomprehensible and felt nothing like the other ones. It's amazing to me that so all the first 3 are like small town, small location sets where they can sort of.
But yeah, they were allowed to focus their budget more on the
Krites, yeah. And I don't. Where did the hell they get the money to suddenly do outer space stuff, which I feel like was just more expensive? I mean, still in its enclosed thing. It was just another Alien ripoff.
Those, man-eating hairballs that you do not believe in.
Yeah, what about them?
Well, I am reading 2 life forms on your level that could be them.
Where?
I don't know, but I do know that they are real close. And Bernie, I think that you should get up here, and I do mean now.
But it didn't work because it didn't feel. Because my favorite part of the early Critters movies is the sort of Midwestern Anytown sort of vibe more than the Critters. The Critters aren't that cool. They aren't that interesting. I sort of like the atmosphere of them. 4th one lost the atmosphere. Page 21. Fall into embrace of the vampire. Even watching it on DVD, it feels like you're watching a video, doesn't it?
yes.
And that was sort of the charm of straight-to-video, because it felt like video. Same way grindhouse movies or drive-in movies. You still feel like they shot it for the drive-in. You know what I mean? They shot this for video, and it feels like video. Shot on film, but still, Anne Gorsad. Is that how you say it?
I say yes.
Made this movie. Well, because you learn this from the article. She was an editor. She was an editor, a big editor, a film editor. She edited The Two Jakes. She edited One from the Heart. and she edited Bram Stoker's Dracula. And what I get from this is that the idea of this movie came from the something that I think they shot. I've seen photos of it and I've seen footage of it, that there was an extra scene at the end of Dracula where she leaves the church and falls into the embrace of her husband, and that she's safe now, and that was wrong for the movie, and that was wrong for feminism, that was wrong for the idea of love, that the movie should end with her and Dracula together. So what is Embrace of the Vampire about? It's about her, right? Mm-hmm. She's supposed to be. I want you to take a look at this. They didn't do much stuff like this, but this is good. Pinups. Fangoria wasn't big on their pinups, but they know what they're doing here. This movie knew what it was doing, and it's weird looking at it. The more popular version is the unrated version. I don't know what rated version there was. Was this originally on video as rated? This went by the MPAA, and there was a softer version of this, because we know it best on. I remember it on like whatever, Cinemax or Showtime, but I know it best on DVD. And it's not that dirty. It's not that graphic. There's a.
I think it's because she's famous.
There's an orgy scene in this movie with that doesn't even have nudity in it. Like it's that tame. Also reading, watching it and then reading it, and both times I didn't realize, so the whole movie is building up to her 18th birthday, so she's supposed to be 17 years old.
Yeah.
I always joke about, especially around this time when 90210, these middle-aged people who are playing teenagers, and you buy that she was 17 years old. It's an ad for a Darth Vader sculpture. Again, shows you where the mindset is in this issue, and where horror was really sort of waning for just a second, and science fiction was taking over. The special editions, when they came back in the theaters, was in '97. So this is still 2 years before, and they're still pushing a big Darth Vader toy, because he just never went away. But at the same time, what's Darth doing in the middle of right in the middle of my Fangoria magazine? Page 26, supervising species. So like I said, for 5 issues in a row, they talked about species. Just 5 issues in a row, they talked about Lord of Illusions, or Hideaway, or Thinner, or whatever else we're talking. Vampire in Brooklyn. I caught it late night, because I was still at an age where horror movies were just as naughty as a sexy movie, because my parents just didn't like them. So I watched them secretly in my room at night when they would premiere on these channels. Despite having some gore, some practical effects, it's half and half. There's a lot of blood and weird guts in the movie, and there's also this topless blonde throughout the movie. And despite all this stuff, I just remember thinking man, does this movie stink? And and the weirdest part is that, I don't know, did that come from the script? Because the thing that bummed me out most is that cast of otherwise amazing people: Michael Madsen, Ben Kingsley, Forrest Whitaker, Alfred Molina.
I was so excited for it, and I thought it was supposed to be like an alien movie, like The Alien, and I thought it was supposed to be like that, only it was a girl one that was getting people pregnant, and I was like, that's neat.
Well, here's the thing. Just look at the cover. Who do you think designed this?
Well, yeah, I was smart enough to know.
So what's the problem here? Could it be computer effects? Because Geiger designed it. They brought him in because the director and screenwriter both had different ideas of what it should look like, and it didn't work. So they brought in the master to design their weird creature, who, to be perfectly honest, he doesn't have a lot of range.
He has a...
He has an aesthetic. He has a look, yes.
When you want your thing to look like that.
Look like that. They brought him in.
Get him.
Except when you give it to the Nintendo 64 guy, and instead of Dan O'Bannon, suddenly it looks like Lawnmower Man. It looks like Hideaway. It looks like the stuff of mid-90s, which maybe there's a whole third section. Well, it's because science fiction was like the frosting of the 90s, because it was always there between the movies I just mentioned and X-Files and Event Horizon, which everyone loves. Meanwhile, underneath you had, I guess you call them slasher. You can call them slashers because they carried over from the 80s. And people like to point out, and I guess I'll agree, that maybe Dr. Giggles killed that because no one liked it and no one saw it, and there weren't any sequels after that. So they took what was the biggest sort of transition between the 80s and 90s as far as like killers. Silence of the Lambs. Serial killers. That was the underlying thing, and that was always there in the first half of the 90s, and then it was there big in the second half of the 90s. It's funny that I go through all the issues of 1995. There is 1 or 2 mentions of Seven. You thought they would have clung to that movie, because after Silence of the Lambs won all their awards, horror fans claimed that movie. We've talked about this before. They claimed that movie as a horror movie. Yes, horror is important. Yes, horror can make money and win awards and be prestigious. And then Seven comes out, which is
all of that,
and I love it. I still call it the best ripoff of Silence of the Lambs that's ever been made, which is okay.
No.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
Same class. No.
Just because of when it exists. I remember the Howard Shore score was a big thing. This was when I was still had the option of renting movies from places other than Blockbuster that let you take home the cover of the movie.
Yeah.
And so halfway through the movie, I could be like, man, this music is familiar. Who did the music? And I could pick up the box and turn it over and look at the credits. Couldn't do that Blockbuster covers in their weird white condom covers that you take home.
Nope. It didn't give you any information. It told you what genre it was.
Right.
Maybe. If that was correct or not. I don't know.
And there would always be 3 recommendations.
Yes.
I'll never forget. When I rented, looking at the back of Eyes Wide Shut, and they would give you recommendations of movies on the back of movies. And I looked on the back of Eyes Wide Shut. 9.5 Weeks, Boogie Nights, and Orgasmo.
Orgasmo, eh?
Yes.
I find it funny that establishment would recommend that movie at all, considering
that's a good point. Video Eye of Dr. Cyclops. We got The Fear, which the cover is just better than the movie. Because even this weird wooden robot in the movie isn't even as good as he is on the cover of the movie.
Oh my gosh.
It's got a weird vibe though. Like It's fun to have on, I guess. But if you want to sit there and watch it, it's a bit of a snore. Sleep Stalker. You ever see Sleep Stalker? No? I told you there was after Pulp Fiction came out, where I was in this trend where I rent it with my parents. We watch it on like Friday nights. We get McDonald's and watch Pulp Fiction for Friday nights for like that went on for like a few months. And then one weekend, we got the McDonald's and we sit down and we put in the movie, and it's fucking Sleep Stalker with the Pulp Fiction cover. And the movie starts. We're like, I don't recognize any of this. I don't recognize any of this. Where's Tim Roth and Amanda Plummer?
Were you pissed?
Yes, I was pissed.
Did you guys watch the whole thing?
No, and I'm glad. Eventually, again, it made its way on the cable. And when you want to talk about shitty effects.
Jesus Christ. Quiet.
supposed to be like some sort of Sandman monster. Fuck that.
Really?
They also Ed Wood is on here,
Oh.
which they recommend despite its glaring inaccuracies. When that movie came out, everyone loved it. Fangoria was like, wait a minute, we know Ed Wood, and this movie's bullshit. Because it's true. The story that we were given, which I didn't, when I saw that movie, I thought that was the story of Ed Wood. But there's a lot of, it is...
Inconsistencies with this.
Well, yeah, it's fake. It's not... He was nothing like that. The way things played out was nothing like that. It is just a big fantasy work, and that's fine. I'm not reading a biography. I'm watching a movie,
And so a fictionalized version of nonfiction is not against the law.
No, it's not. No, and then as they say, yes, despite blah blah blah, this movie is wonderful, and then they're right. And the other movie is Puppet Masters, which he nailed it. Dr. Cyclops. I don't know who that actually is, but he was great. This was like their biggest review section. They would cover movies that were coming out and go on the set and interview people. This was their review section. And he said the first 2/3 of the movie are amazing, and I agree with that. It's like one of the this on par with Speed as far as one of the best action movies I've seen. And then the third act, what do you remember from that? I don't remember anything from that. Where they go into the hive of where all these aliens are living and producing people. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
I don't remember anything about that.
I do.
But it's boring and stupid and
And no one cares or wants to see anything about that. I promise.
Exactly. And it's too bad. But first 2/3 of Puppet Masters...
Somebody writing that script is like, oh, this is good drama.
Yeah. No, they didn't know how to end it. Page 34, The Granny. I've looked all over for this movie. Haven't found it. And I think I know why. Because they're not shy about this. Again, 1995, even though the drive-in has transitioned into direct-to-video, the whole article is about, this movie's really low budget, but we're going to cover it anyway. And this was a good example of you look at the photographs of these, and there's these beautiful photographs that were developed on film. Whereas I bet the movie doesn't look as cool as the pictures that you see in Fangoria. And that was true of every movie I ever saw that Fangoria recommended me, where the pictures they would take were really, had great compositions and well lit and looked gory and weird and had depth to them. And they see the movie and it's just this humdrum bullshit. And I feel I still want to see it. If I could find The Granny, I haven't looked at any physical media, but I looked at streaming, and it's not around. I don't know how much I'd want to pay for it. I don't think I want a $30 Vinegar Syndrome version of The Granny when the movie only cost $25. Doesn't seem fair. Page 38, the verdict on Judge Dredd. You have anything to say on Judge Dredd?
I didn't want to see it.
I didn't want to see it either, and why not? Isn't that weird? Demolition Man sounded fine. Judge Dredd, oof, no thank you.
Because
look at him.
Look at him.
Holy crud! He's a sitting duck out there.
He knows what he's doing.
The law!
Because
stupid.
I saw the trailer. I remember I saw the trailer at Crimson Tide. Just to give you a setting. Because I wasn't a comic book kid. I'm still not a comic book kid. And the big thing about this movie is that Judge Dredd never takes off. He never takes off his mask. You never see his face.
Oh, so they made the movie so that he could?
You saw the trailer. Yeah. He takes it off immediately. It's fucking Stallone. Supposedly, Stallone said, if it's important to I leave it on if it's important. But the director said, no way. We paid for you. We want to see Sylvester Stallone's face. Fucking comic book fans can burn in hell, as far as I'm concerned. And I'm not saying that to defend the Judge Dredd movie from 1995. Because I didn't see it, and I don't think I'm going to. I'm not going to see any of the other ones after it, because it looks stupid to me. If you want to consider movies as another art form, then I want to see it do something else than what it's pulling from, because it's always going to be fucking pulling from something, especially now. If you want to defend comic book movies, then you've got to sit back and take what these comic book movies give you. When people are pissed off about the Joker movie because it didn't follow any sort of background that any of the comic books took, then you're an idiot. If they were to remake a Nightmare on Elm Street movie, I want to see you get rid of the hat and the sweater, because they're fucking stupid looking. Much in the way Coppola got rid of the black cape and the slick back hair with the widow's peak.
Yeah, he made Dracula handsome.
He made Dracula cool.
Cool and
in
handsome.
Various different ways. But even just handsome as a young man, yes.
But and genuinely frightening.
But then as the old, yeah. I don't want you want to read the comic book? Then read the fucking comic book. If I was going to go see this movie, why would I go see this movie? To watch Sly shoot guns and blow shit up. I want to see him in some goofy-ass mask that some comic book artist created. Why it's in this issue, I don't know. I guess because there's some makeup effects in the movie. Not to be outdone by page 45, On the Congo Line.
Another movie I was excited for.
I was excited too, because it had giant apes created by Stan Winston. I went to the theater to see it and didn't understand what the fuck I was looking at.
Either.
Like, was this scary? Was this supposed to be scary? I don't even know what this movie's about. This is what Michael Crichton is when you don't give it to someone as talented as Steven Spielberg, because maybe Michael Crichton isn't that interesting. Or because maybe Frank Marshall isn't that great of a filmmaker. Apologies to Arachnophobia, but this movie stunk.
Arachnophobia's success doesn't come from the director.
No, it doesn't.
Totally Jeff Daniels. Completely.
Definitely Jeff Daniels. Definitely not John Goodman, who is a great actor and I love him to death. And I think everyone does. He's just universally loved. But he stunk in that movie.
Oh no, he was the bumbling with the goofy sound cue annoying character.
He does. Maybe that was Frank Marshall's fault.
Yeah, maybe. But Jeff Daniels was great.
Jeff Daniels
he was great in it. Believably scared the whole movie.
He's alright, well here's the thing. Names the time when Jeff Daniels wasn't great. That's my transition into the point that this was the first time I ever saw Laura Linney.
I knew you would talk about her
and
when we got to this.
Because I was fucking 10 years old, and I'm like, this actor sucks. And then I saw Primal Fear, and I'm like, oh, fucking her again? She sucks.
She's good in some things.
She's good when...
She is. I'm sorry. She's good in some things, and then she gets...
What? Like Squid and the Whale?
She's also good in
Truman Show.
Truman Show.
Because again, like Squid and the Whale, she has to be a.
She's good at playing a cunt.
She's
really good at playing
cunty.
a cunt.
Yeah, but is she though?
Yes, I think she's good at playing cunty Karen. She's good at playing cunty Karen without being
No,
over the top.
I don't think she is.
Maternal instinct. Long may she reign. What the hell are you doing anyway?
What am I doing? I'll tell you what I'm doing. We're getting out of here.
We are. What about them?
Put him on the endangered species list. Come on!
The way a real cunty Karen actually is.
It's not about the character. I'm trying to separate because I have genes in me. And I'm trying to separate myself from the character and the performance. Because I remember my mother hated Rainn Wilson because of his character on The Office. She really disliked Jason Alexander because of his character on Seinfeld. And I was have to say, no, you have to understand, no, you just hate the character. And what I'm saying is, like, Kate Blanchett in Tar, like, you just hate her, but she does it so much better than Laura Linney does it. There's a flimsiness in the performance that I'm responding to, where I'm like, I'm not buying this. That's what it is.
They're on par. They're on par. There's depths to their cynicism, and there's depths to both of their performances and characters.
Okay.
That's the reason why we hate Kate Blanchett in Tar is because of how intelligent she is. And,
all right, so it's a bad example. It's a different character. All right. I'm gonna get through this. Let's put it aside. What a horrible character to have as your lead character.
Yeah.
In this movie. The only thing I remember from this movie, and I think this might be true of a lot of people, is that there is an interaction between Tim Curry and Delroy Lindo, where they're sitting and talking, and Delroy Lindo is scolding him.
Mr. Homolka?
Oh.
Stop eating my sesame cake. Stop eating my sesame cake! Mm-hmm. What are you doing in my country? You bag of shit.
Do you remember that scene?
Yes.
That's a well acted scene. That's a well written scene, and that's it. And you could just isolate that scene and have that as the movie. Oh, and Fangoria also wants to point out that Bruce Campbell is in it for a few minutes. They're really proud of that, and I think that's why they put it in here. Let's get into 90s horror with page 50. Ice Cream and Kooks. Now we're talking 90s horror. Now we're talking the death of the slasher. The slow, tragic death of the slasher. And we witnessed it on screen, and it was glorious. And I enjoyed it. And that was the fun thing about where, like, I'd read about it in this magazine, and then I'd go to the store, and there would be right there. And there would be no wait time. The thing about this article, though, is that it talks a little bit about Ice Cream Man, which you can go through the movie and review it and nitpick what you liked about it, what you didn't like about it. But it really doesn't matter because so very few starring roles for Clint exist. And so you just enjoy it for that. And this whole article is actually about his entire career. Starting from when he was a kid on Outer Limits and Star Trek to like his first sort of big adult role, which was Rock and Roll High School. And, you know, and it's an interview with him. And he talks about every one of these steps. He talks about meeting the Ramones and how they were so nice, and how there was actually a scene, how Ron was actually in the movie in a scene that they cut out, which is a bummer because that'd be cool. Major League Hollywood director of Cocoon, Backdraft, and The Paper. I love that The Paper is the most recent thing they can have, which is fine for me. It's exciting for me. But this is also July 95. Am I crazy, or is Apollo 13 like 20 minutes away?
Yeah.
So why didn't they mention that? Enough about Ron. Here we are. It's Clint, and we're talking about Ron. Evil Speak. They talk about Saturday Night Dead Night 4, Tex, Carnosaur. This article is probably the best thing about this issue because it's an interview with Clint Howard, and he had the most Fangoria-ish career.
Yeah, this is true.
Way the fuck more than Bruce Campbell.
Yeah.
Way more than Robert Englund, if you want to say.
He just cornered one market.
Well, he did.
And he had a couple of small roles.
He had a couple of small roles in the market he cornered. Mm-hmm. I'm sure it's written down somewhere. But if you talk about how much screen time Robert Englund has in Nightmare on Elm Street movies, it can't be much more than half an hour.
Yeah, I know.
That's amazing. Clint Howard is fucking workhorse. He was making the shit for 80s and 90s. All right, page 56. Dark Nights of Composing. This is their coverage of Batman Forever. An interview with Elliot Goldenthal, the composer. That's their coverage of the Batman movie, is with the guy who did the music. Oddly enough, not the makeup person, costume designer, set decorator, whatever. Which is fine. Because
did he do a lot of horror scores?
Yes, he did. He did the score for Interview with the Vampire. He did the score for Pet Sematary. He did the score for Alien 3. So yes, fair enough. And I like that again, another article is covering yet a whole nother aspect.
They picked a niche from the movie.
Yeah. Okay, enough with the makeup people. I don't want to hear you talk about applying latex. Talk about making the music. You know, something different. You know Alien 3 better than I do. I don't know if the music stands out.
Yeah, it's memorable to me.
From Alien 3?
Yeah.
It is.
The music for all three of the first
yeah, okay. They're all different.
They're all different and memorable to me from my childhood.
Not
in my head.
in no way comparative to Aliens, which is the most famous music score.
But they're in there. They're in there.
They're in there.
They're in there.
See, now I'll say that about Batman Forever, that it's in there. I know what you mean. I know what you mean by that. But I remember when the movie came out, because he has a very bombastic score for that movie. But I remember thinking, like, where's my Danny Elfman music? Where's the fucking theme song to Batman as I know it? But instead he came up with this, like, really well, to be fair, he came up with music for that movie that matched the movie. Page 62 is an article called Good with Numbers. It's an interview with a screenwriter who wrote for direct-to-video sequels. Can you think of the most 90s movie thing you could think of, but also the most bottom of the barrel thing you could think of?
Yeah.
Direct-to-video sequels. That's a funny phrase. Mark Sevi, Relentless 4, Scanner Cop 2, retitled Scanners The Showdown, which is technically Scanners 5. Ghoulies 4, Class of 1999 2, The Substitute, Excessive Force 2, and Fast Getaway 2. We talk about people like this all the time. What a life. What a life to kick back and to get a phone call, or it's 1995, maybe he got an email saying, hey, can you write this? And then you have to go down to your video store and rent Scanner Cop and then try to write a sequel to it. Or you rent Class of 1999 and try to write a sequel to it. And for some reason, not call it Class of 2024, but call it Class of 1999 2. Just saying, like, yeah. Scanner Top 2, I've always said that the Scanners movies go from worst to best. Whereas Scanner Cop 2 being the best and Scanners being the worst. Mm-hmm. Credit to him for writing great movies. Yeah! To hell with him for writing Ghoulies 4. Do you remember Ghoulies 4?
Nope, gone.
No, you don't. Gone. All right. Let me remind you of Ghoulies 4. It had no ghoulies in it. It had short people in it. Two short people dressed as trolls.
No, man, I don't think we're in Oz anymore.
Shut up, stupid! Let's get out of here!
Yeah, why don't you push me more?
Why don't you bathe before we crossed over?
And they were the ghoulies.
Talk about taking a...
No. Well, taking what?
A nosedive?
A nosedive? Do you like the early Ghoulies movies? Think about that for a minute. It's like Critters. It's like Critters, except that Critters 1 is tolerable and Ghoulies 1 sucks. Ghoulies 2 is great. That's the amusement park one. Ghoulies 3, we tried twice to watch Ghoulies 3. Ghoulies 3.
I don't remember it all.
Ghoulies 3, Ghoulies Go to College. People love that one. You and I tried twice to watch it.
Because I equate that with anything that goes to space. People love those.
We thought it would be great. It should be great.
Because of a bunch of drunken, half-naked teenagers.
It's not that good. What you just said does not describe it, because it's not as good as that. That's what it should have been, and it wasn't, and it stunk. Anyway, again, like Clint Howard, this is a great Fangoria interview, because this is the kind of stuff that was important in the mid-90s. Masks of Horror.
Is it anyone licensed? Oh, Tales from the Crypt.
Tales from the Crypt and Bob De Niro with a neck.
You need the neck. neck. Otherwise, the mask just becomes your own body, and it looks stupid.
$79.95.
That's way more than the $50.
Crypt Keeper no neck, $44.95. Same with Creature. Deluxe Creature, $79.95. Creature, $49.95. I'm so pleased that they call him the Creature, and that's because that's what they called him. They were very serious about that. I don't know if that was Kenny Branagh's insistence. On the set, they called him the Creature, not Frankenstein's monster, Frankenstein's creature, because it was more respectful. Frankenstein was, that was the next big one. All those movies, that was the first half of the 90s for me. Then the second half, when Kevin Williamson took over, that's the second half. Yes? And it wasn't just that the stories changed, the aesthetic changed. But when Scream made a lot of money, yes, like any time, everyone said, oh, let's do this. And so they did.
For every movie for 5 years.
Yes, up to and including hiring Kevin Williamson to write a lot of them. And why the fuck not? You have a voice that we like and that audiences seem to like. That's when I tuned out. And you know what? It is incidental that I stopped buying Fangoria right at that time. I think it was right after From Dusk Till Dawn came out. And it had nothing, and it actually had nothing to do with the fact that horror movies changed. My taste suddenly changed. I fell out of horror and I guess schlock, if you want to call it that, and suddenly decided like I'm now focusing my attention on the prestigious stuff that I've missed, and Fangoria isn't covering that. All the Oscar winners, critically acclaimed stuff. I want to catch up on that. Stuff that I didn't just see when it was a new release in the past 15 years. I want to see that other stuff. And Fangoria was done for me. So it was just coincidental that they were suddenly covering stuff that I wasn't that into. So, like, horror movies sort of ended. So there's only a few more issues after this. What else can you say about 90s horror? Probably a lot.